The Premier League fixture schedule for the 25-26 season has come out, and of course everybody has a response, and a lot of them are about how the league is out to get their particular team, and it's all nonsense. The fixture schedule, other than trying to plan your trips to games, has no relevance and doesn't matter. It's one of the most overblown, overreactionary things on the entire calendar season. We're going to talk about it next, here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. So I recognize the irony there, talking about how it's so overblown and overrated, and now we're going to talk about it, but we're not going to break down why it matters, because it doesn't really matter. This is one of the most overreactionary things on the entire footballing calendar, is the order in which you play the teams, and that's because every team plays the same schedule. The order really doesn't matter. Now, when I say it doesn't matter, I mean it ends up mattering, but we have no control over why that is, and I'll get into that in a second. But before we do, hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. Get down in the comments section, what do you think about your team's schedule? Leave those comments down below. You can also leave some comments on Twitter and Blue Sky at Pitchside Pub, and check out the website pitchsidepub.com. So yes, it ends up mattering during the season because sometimes you catch a team when they're hot, catch a team when they're cold, and there is some luck involved. But trying to figure out when that's going to happen now is a complete fool's errand. There was a stretch in the middle of the season when Manchester City was incredibly beatable, and the clubs that got to play them in that November through January-ish sort of range, when they were really not very good, they played a completely different Manchester City team than the one at the start of the season that came out in their normal form, and the one that finished the season relatively hot. So yes, there is some luck of the draw, and it does end up mattering when you played a team, because a team may not be the same in November as they are in April. But we have no idea who that's going to be, when that's going to be, what team's going to be in good form when, and frankly, in a lot of cases, we don't even know which competitions, which teams are going to be good. Look at last year. We thought the early season loss that Liverpool had to Nottingham Forest was a really bad loss. As it turns out, that wasn't that bad. Nottingham Forest ended up being a really good team last year, but we didn't know that. It was only the second or third game of the season, and we didn't expect them to be one of the bigger players in the league that year. So that looked like it was a nice cupcake start. They blew it, and then as it turns out, it wasn't even that bad of a loss because they turned out to be a really good team. And that's what happens every year. So when you go to look at your team's schedule and you go, oh man, we've got a really tough start, you don't really know that. A lot of clubs saw Manchester United on their schedule and went, that's going to be a tough game. No, it wasn't. Same thing with Tottenham. They saw Tottenham on the schedule. Oh, we're starting with Manchester United and Tottenham. That's a really tough start in our first 3 or 4 games. No, as it turns out, it really wasn't. We have no idea how these things are going to turn out. But even if we do, you have to play every team home and away regardless. So it doesn't really matter. If you have a tough start, let's say you have all Big Six clubs at the very start of the season, well, then you got them out of the way. So now you're going to have an easier run down the stretch. We saw this at the end of last season when clubs were saying, oh, this team has an easy run down the stretch. The Premier League scheduled it like this because they want that club to win. Well, that just means they had to play the harder teams earlier, and thus they probably are coming from behind. It all works itself out. So if you are getting worked up about having a hard stretch at the beginning or a hard stretch at the end or anything like that, you got to remember you had your easy games already. If you got the hard ones late, or if you have the hard ones early, you get them out of the way, and then you have easy ones down the stretch. It all balances itself out, and you cannot possibly argue against this. So when I see some clubs who get bent out of shape, and we have the schedule here, and we see the breakdown in August, but if you go club by club, I saw a lot of Arsenal fans getting up in arms about the start that they have, and I get it. You've got Manchester United, Leeds, and then Liverpool, Nottingham Forest, City, and Newcastle. That could be, on paper, that looks like a tough stretch in that games 3 through 6 for Arsenal. But we don't know. Is Nottingham Forest going to be good again? We don't know. Manchester United could be good. They're making some investments this summer, so we don't know. That could be 5 of 6 tough games. It could be 3 of 6 tough games if Leeds is who we think they're going to be, if United doesn't bounce back, and if Nottingham Forest takes a step back. We don't know. And 2 of the tough ones against Forest and City are at home. But the bigger issue is that it doesn't matter, right? You got City, Newcastle, and Liverpool out of the way in your first 6 games. That's great. Now you've only got 3 more games against them the whole rest of the season. So if you get off to that slow start, it doesn't matter because now you've got some easier games coming up where you have West Ham, Fulham, Palace, and Burnley over your next 4. Those are some places where you can get more points, or you're more likely to get points out of it. But there are no easy games in the Premier League, so none of it should be where you say, oh, that's an easy win. There are very few of those outside of maybe the recently promoted teams. And again, if you have the hard ones early, you get the easier ones later, so it doesn't matter. There is no preferential treatment here. Now, here's where it can play out. If you are a fan base that is going to be overreactionary and is already calling for the head of your manager, let's look at Manchester United, where half the fan base already wants Ruben Amorim gone. So if he has the harder games early on, that could spell a problem for him because he won't be around later to fix the problem. So Arsenal right off the bat, that's going to be a tough one. Fulham and Burnley are a little bit easier, but then Manchester City and Chelsea. So 3 of the first 5 are definitely places where they could get losses. And so you have to hope for 6 points out of those first 2 games and maybe a draw in there, and you've got 7 points from your first 5, and at least you're not in a relegation battle. And then you've got some easier tasks ahead. You've got Brentford and Sunderland. Those are places you can get points, but there aren't too many easy games on the calendar. Liverpool will be obviously tough. Brighton's always tough, and Nottingham Forest had a good year. So it's not like you've got these easy options, but the club, when you get the hard ones out of the way, will have a chance to play the easy games later. The question is, will the manager, will Ruben Amorim be around to right the ship for those games? Is he going to get that kind of leash? And that's always a big question. When we're talking about firing managers, you can't have that conversation without Chelsea. And they had a good season and they got into European spots, but they're always reactionary. There's still a large part of the fan base that doesn't want Enzo Maresca to be the manager. And if they get off to a slow start, that could spell the end for him. So they have Palace, not a cakewalk, but not one of the tougher matchups. West Ham, Fulham, Brentford. So and Manchester United, which is a complete wild card. So it's actually really not until Liverpool down in October where they play a game where they may be expected to drop points. They will be the favorites in every one of their first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games most likely, particularly with Brighton being at home. So that means Enzo Maresca could get off to a very hot start, but when we get to the end of September and Chelsea fans are talking about how they are leading the league, where they're having such a great season, we will be able to point out and say, yeah, but you really haven't played anybody all that great just yet. It all evens itself out. So this is a chance for Chelsea to get off to a hot start, and maybe Enzo Maresca solidifies himself, but there's, it all comes back around. And that's really the point here, is there is no real advantage. Now, you do have to look at certain aspects of the calendar, like when the AFCON tournament is. And if you're going to catch a team that has a lot of African players at a time when they will be missing. So there are definitely relevant factors. I'm not saying don't look at the fixture schedule. It's not of any interest. It's just not a conspiracy. It's just not out to get you. It's not out to favor your team. And if you're looking at it and going, hey, this is great because we've got a chance to get off to a hot start, well, that just means your spring is going to be really tough. And if you look at it and say, man, we've got a really rough start to this, keep that in mind and be patient with your manager, be patient with your players, and recognize the fact that you had a lot of what you expect to be your hard games lumped at the beginning of the season, and then it should even itself out. It doesn't matter at the end of the year if you were in third place for 1 day or 6 months. As long as you end up there, as long as you get there eventually, you can sneak into one of those European spots on the last day and you still get to play in Europe the following season. You can win the table on the last day and not have been in first place at all during the season, and that's still winning. It doesn't matter. It's just about where you are in the table at the end of the season, how many points you have, and how it ends up. And everybody has to play everybody on the road and at home. It doesn't really matter what the order is. Do you agree with that? Do you think it matters if you get off to a slow start or a fast start, and does that change the dynamic during the season? Momentum is a thing, form is a thing, but it's also false form if you're beating bad teams, or if you are playing well but losing to really good competition, that can change overnight. Doesn't matter. To me, it only matters if you're going to fire your coach because of those results. But I'd love to get your thoughts. Get down in the comments. Let me know what you think. You can also leave some comments on Twitter and Blue Sky at Pitchside Pub. While you're at it, make sure you hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel, and check out the website pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.